Hello, welcome to my channel, Just Here to Chat. My name is Tara, and today's video is going to be about the impact that anger can have in our life with regards to feeling stuck around different scenarios. And we'll discuss a little bit about how to recognize that and ways to maybe manage getting out of it. But again, it's going to vary from person to person. Everybody has different scenarios going on in their lives. But if you're interested in that material, if you're interested in sticking around and you find this video helpful, please like, subscribe, share. Feel free to share any of my content if you think anyone could benefit from it. All right? Well, hopefully I'll see you there. All right. Hi, welcome back. So, when we talk about anger or any emotion, I think it's important to first highlight that all emotions are experienced on a continuum, if you will. Okay. So, anger in and of itself can be experienced at different levels of emotion, right? So, if you think of anger at its most benign or easiest state, we would look at irritation or, you know, just that's irritating. That's experienced very differently from aggravation to anger to rage, right? So with anger, one thing we need to really notice is we don't really ever want it to get to the level of rage, because if we get to rage sometime, and that can impact different people in much different ways, but rage typically takes us out of our place of reason completely. And therefore, once we get to that level of what we call rage, we're not using skills. Okay, now we're just more in an impulsive, reactive, sometimes destructive mode of being. And it doesn't have to be physical destruction, it could be when we say those things that we really wish we could take back. Okay, or we engage in those behaviors that we really regret. Okay, and one thing I've talked about in the past is regret is often a feeling of being stuck, when we just have a hard time pushing forward, because we're so stuck in what we did and the regret of doing it, or even sometimes what was done to us. Okay, wishing that, well, if I made a different decision, I wouldn't have been in that situation and that wouldn't have happened, whatever the case may be. So one thing we talk about when we're dealing with emotion is sometimes it's appropriate to distract. You know, if you really have to be mindful in the moment, we really can't sit with that emotion. All right. If we're recognizing that I'm angry and this is quickly going to go red hot, right? I'm going to quickly get enraged, then I might need to distract from that. That's not an emotion that we really want to sit with necessarily. Again, it's going to depend on what's going on in the moment, within your life, within the context of the situation itself. Okay. So if you're really struggling with some of these things, then I suggest, like, if this is a pattern that comes up for you over and over again, I highly suggest seeking help. Okay. We all benefit from help here and there. Okay. Nobody gets through life without needing some level of help at some point or another. Okay. If you find your pride is keeping you from asking for help or things like that, because that's a real thing too. Oh, if I ask for help, then that's going to make me weak. Or maybe sometimes it's anger is what fuels me, because anger is a very motivating emotion. Okay. So it's oftentimes sometimes expressed as a secondary emotion, you know, depending on your belief systems around other emotions. So if I get sad and go quick to anger, then anger is probably a secondary emotion because I resent sadness for whatever reason. Maybe I was told that being sad is weak, you know, or being anything like that, you know, embarrassed. Ooh, if I get embarrassed and I go right to rage, that's something to do with a subconscious belief system around embarrassment or sadness or whatever the case may be. And then therefore we might express through anger. Okay. I know in my life, anger was a secondary emotion for me. Okay. It helped me from feeling weak. It really did. So thankfully, I'm beyond that at this point. But because weak is not much like perfection, it's a unless you're talking about physical weakness, but even then, it's perspective. You know, if I go out and try and lift 500 pounds, I'm going to feel weak. Well, maybe I shouldn't start there, right? I bet you if I worked at it every day and that was a goal of mine, I could eventually lift 500 pounds. As long as it's aligned with my other goals, you know, do I want to look like I can lift 500 pounds? Everyone's different. Some people aspire towards that and they want to be a bodybuilder. They want to have a chiseled frame. They want to have these things. The thing is that most things are within our reach. They are. It's just oftentimes things like impatience will derail us. But we're not going there right now. I'm trying to stay focused. So anger. Okay, so anger can be very motivating. It's we think of it like fire if we're thinking like elements. It's that fire element. There are other really positive attributes of that too. Inspiration, right? Passion. There's all kinds of things that go with that type of element. But with regards to anger is not bad. Okay. I always love that movie. What was it called? Inside Out, the little cartoon where it highlights in the movie how different emotions are necessary for us in life. Anger highlights for us sometimes when our boundaries are breached. Okay? Or it's an indication that a boundary needs to be put in place or reinforced. Anger, again, can teach us about our belief systems around other emotions. Like I was saying, if it's a secondary emotion, it can tell us, wow, I maybe I'm angry because I feel stuck, or is it the anger that's getting me stuck? It can be very cyclical. It really can. So with regards to anger, the important piece that I was talking about earlier is that if we feel that we're escalating pretty quick, then we're going to want to distract from that so that we can cool down. Usually you'll hear me talking about in order to heal, you have to feel, right? You have to be able to sit with an emotion. But obviously, not every time we feel an emotion is an appropriate time to sit with it, okay? And with regards to anger, we need to make sure that when and if we're sitting with it, that we're sitting with it on a milder expression of it versus closer to enraged. Because once we get there, it's really hard to pull yourself out of that until it's been expressed. And then oftentimes with that comes regret. If you ever get to that point, it is important to have compassion for yourself and recognize I'm human, I'm fallible, I make mistakes. So instead of sitting in that regret, and I've done a video on that, I'll tag it at the end. Instead of sitting there in that regret, we want to be able to forgive ourselves or forgive others. And forgiveness comes around acceptance. And as I've said in the past, acceptance does not equal approval. Okay? But it is a key part with regards to healing. We have to accept that something happened or that we did something, whatever the case may be, before we can either problem solve a way around it or through it, or just release it and move forward. Okay. So it's usually through this process that a lot of things are brought up for us with regards to our belief systems and maybe even where they came from. A lot of our belief systems are taught to us. And we do the same thing when we have children. We teach them, whether it's our faith, we teach it to them. And that's not a bad thing. This is really important. It's important to have a core value system in order to be able to navigate life. Okay. So when I talk about deep rooted belief systems and whether or not they serve you, I'm not vilifying them. Okay. I really hope you understand that. What I ask of myself, okay, and maybe even for you, but again, you have to walk your path and live your life the way that resonates for you. In my life, when I recognize that I have certain core belief systems that maybe I didn't recognize before, because we just sometimes we're just living our lives, right? So it's if we're paying attention when these things come up for us, then we recognize them. And if we want, we can choose to dig a little deeper and say, okay, well, where did this come from? Is this serving me? And what I mean by that is that the hope is that when we have these deep values and these core belief systems, they're helping us navigate life, but are they helping us navigate a life that we feel fulfilled in? All right. And not always the case. Maybe it's fulfilling certain aspects of our lives, but in other areas, we're feeling stuck. Okay. We're feeling like, I just feel like there's something more or there's something better, whatever how that may play out for you. Okay. It's going to vary from person to person. So when I'm saying these things, I'm trying to have the bigger, broader picture. But, if you need to work out specifics, then I suggest finding someone, whether it's someone you trust, or it should always hopefully be someone you trust, especially when you're dealing with deep aspects of yourself. But whether that's a professional or, a friend, family member, or something like that, then that's left up to your discernment. Okay. And also to the level of which you feel you need intervention, if any. But in any case, it's recognizing, okay, is this making me feel stuck? Having this core belief system of, all right, you see this sometimes if people are in a job that they don't like. Okay. If I have a core belief system that I'm not a quitter, okay, which most of us, I think, can agree is a good core belief system to some degree, right? However, maybe what I need to do is not change that core belief system, but maybe tweak it a little, like reframe it, okay? That if I leave a job that's not making me feel fulfilled, or it's making me feel a particular way that's creating negative aspects like anger or frustration, levels of anger, right? In my life, when I weigh out my pros and cons, if you will, is it really serving me? Am I feeling stuck? Or can I look at it differently and say, I'm not quitting, I'm evolving, I'm moving forward. It's not like I'm quitting this job and just going to sit on my couch and do nothing. Okay? And again, I'm talking about your capabilities. Some people can't do more than that. Okay? And this isn't about judgment. It's not about any of that. This is more about, for each individual person, finding your own alignment, what resonates for you, where did these beliefs come from? Are they serving you? Do they need to be modified? Maybe just around a scenario. Or is it something that we just don't like at all? If you grow up believing, maybe in your household, you believe that certain people are worse than other people. Maybe if these people aren't of our faith, then they need to be ostracized. Or if these people aren't of our race, then they need to be ostracized, or they're untrustworthy, or whatever the case may be. We can segregate in a lot of different ways as human beings. We classify, we categorize. That's how our brain works too. So that's why it comes so easy for us. Okay. Like judgment and discernment, for instance. Discernment is a skill. Judgment doesn't always work in our favor, right? But it comes easy because discernment is a necessary aspect of life. So in any case, you might grow up in a household that instills this belief system, but as you get older, you recognize that that belief system doesn't sit well with you and that it's creating more stagnation in your life than it is flow. Okay? That's that stuck. Like maybe I really care about this person, but I was taught that they're not a good person, but it's not sitting well with me. So what do I do with that? Right? So sometimes it is reprogramming your belief systems and saying, well, that I don't see where that fits. That doesn't feel right for me. And then it's spending time with that and challenging yourself. So when those thoughts come up for you, sitting with them, challenge them, reframe them, or just say that's not true at all and create a different belief system in that moment. It's going to take repetition, it's going to take time. It's not going to change overnight, but eventually you will see that those negative thoughts don't come up for you as often. Okay? It's like any behavioral pattern. Okay? Thinking is, in a sense, a behavior, it's just not overt, right? So, how we address our thoughts and our belief system is very similar as to how we create and address habits. If we have a habit that we like to call a bad habit, how do we break that? We break it through stopping it, recognizing that I'm about to engage in this, I'm going to stop it, and then engage in a healthier habit or behavior, right? It's the same thing with thinking. It's hard work and it doesn't happen overnight because once habits and behavioral patterns and thought processes or belief systems have been established, it's more difficult to switch them over, but it's not impossible. Okay. But first, before we can even do that, we have to accept that we do believe a certain way. Okay. And sometimes we don't like that. Sometimes that creates what we would consider a negative emotion for us, like maybe shame, like, oh, but I didn't think I thought like that, or I didn't think I believed like that. Maybe you don't. And then there's that dissonance. It's like, I don't really believe like that, but I have this like in me that those are the thoughts that come up, maybe because that's what you were taught. Okay. It's all normal. It's the way the brain works. So the thing is, and this is where we have power as human beings, is if you recognize that a certain way of believing or a certain, whatever the case, whether you believe it, I always say here, this is where we are more conscious, our mindfulness versus here, which is like our more subconscious, deeper belief systems, right? Which is usually how because I like to use my hands if you haven't noticed. Anyway, if I don't believe it here, but I believe it here, and it keeps creating blockages for me with regards to relationships or choices that I make in life around work or what I engage in and what I don't, or where I'll go and where I won't, things like that. If you feel stuck, then it's an indication to say, okay, well, where did this come from so that I can accept that it exists in the first place? Well, first accept it, then where did it come from? Cotton Eye Joe. Sorry. I love music and it always pops in my head. Anyway, once you determine that, then you sit with yourself for a little bit and say, does this resonate with me? Is this really how I want to believe? Or maybe there's aspects about it that I do want to believe, but it needs a little tweaking. Okay, this is the power that we have as human beings. I get passionate about that because we're far more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. If you want to change something about yourself, we a lot of us, you hear this idiom, I think it's an idiom, that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, Cesar Millan taught us that that's not true. You can teach an old dog new tricks and you can change your mind. Okay. In life. We all have that power, but we have to be willing to put the work in because it doesn't come easy. Okay. So hopefully this helps a little bit with anger. With anger, we want to be able to, yes, if it's something that needs healing, we need to be able to sit with it, but we want to sit with it at a level that we can tolerate, not one that's going to quickly escalate, because then we oftentimes will engage in behaviors that we wish we could take back. We don't want to get there, okay? So, and if we're struggling with that, then seek help. to manage that, because maybe that's a deeper rooted issue in your life. Maybe there's trauma there or something that needs to be healed. And not all of us know how to go about doing that. Okay. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I think I've said this in the past. I myself have a therapist. I am a therapist. The important thing is you find someone that you resonate with any kind of professional. Hairdresser, if you don't like how they cut your hair, you're not going to go back to them, hopefully. Some people will. And if you do, that's an indication of why. Something to sit with, figure out. Okay? Same with a doctor. If you feel your doctor is misdiagnosing you, then seek a second opinion. Get another doctor. Okay? Every human being, regardless of their profession, is fallible. Nobody's perfect. Perfection does not exist on this plane of existence. Okay? Hopefully, I don't even know. I don't even want to think on those terms. My point though is that here in our reality, perfection's not a thing. So recognize that and live your life accordingly. Okay? Don't expect perfection from yourself and don't expect it from other people. If you feel you need help, get help. Make sure it's someone that you really feel like you resonate with, okay? That you can work with, someone that you can trust. Because if you don't trust your doctor or your therapist, you're not going to get any good work done, okay? So just putting that out there. All right. I have to get going. So hopefully that's helpful. Like I said, if you find this helpful on any level, if you feel someone else could benefit from it, pass it along, okay? And otherwise, I will talk to you soon. All right. Have a good day.